Okay, let's take a look at a fairly straightforward old-timey song. It's a great song learned from my friend Ken Haferman, who was a banjo player. And he learned it from Charlie Poole and the North Carolina Ramblers. It was also recorded by the New Lost City Ramblers. I think Ken's version is kind of influenced by both of those versions. And we're in the key of G. This is just a really good example of a very straightforward song in the key of G. The chords are as basic as they could be. We got a G chord, a C chord, and a D chord. So there aren't even any seventh chords or anything like that. It's just very, very straightforward. Really, if there's anything tricky about it, it's going to be in the right hand. And you can feel free to make as many added things as you want with the right hand. I'm going to keep it sort of in the middle. I'm going to add a few bass runs, and I'll be doing a little bit of extra strumming, and maybe a hammer-on or two. But the main thing I'm going to do, and if you want to keep it pretty basic, is I'm going to be doing a bass note strum pattern. So I'm going to be alternating between a bass note, which is always going to be, beat 1 is always going to be the lowest note in the chord. So here's a G chord. My first bass note is always going to be that G note on the 6th string. Okay. After every bass note, I'm going to do a strum. The most basic would be just let your hand fall. Even though G is a 6-string chord, you don't need to come back up and get all 6 strings. You just did the low 6th string, and you can just kind of let your hand fall, catch 3 or 4 strings. It's going to sound full enough. You want it to be a real easy, relaxed, kind of 2-motion thing. A pick and a fall, a strum. Not anything more complicated than that. Not pick and then have to come back up and try and get the whole chord. Don't worry about it. Just the bass note is going to cover the low end, and then a 3 or 4 or 5 string strum is going to cover the other half of it. So, okay. And that would go for the C chord. So if you go to the C chord, the 5th string, the C note you're playing on the 3rd fret of the 5th string is going to be your bass note. And we're just alternating those. So beat 1 is a bass note, beat 2 is a strum, beat 3 is a bass note, beat 4 is a strum. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Now the D chord is a 4-string chord, so the lowest note is that open 4th string. It's a D note. So your strum is going to be a little tighter, a little smaller. You can see I'm bringing my pick here, and my strum is not very big. I'm not following through the way I am with the G chord. I'm just doing a 4-string strum. Hard to say. 4-string strum. Now that would sound like this if you're kind of putting those chords together. You go C. Okay, now that is a completely legitimate way to play it. I'm going to add one more wrinkle to it, and that's going to be an alternating bass. So on beat 1 of the G chord, I'm going to play the 6th string, and I'm going to strum. Then I'm going to do another bass note, a different bass note, also in the chord, so the left hand doesn't have to change at all, still holding the G chord. The open 4th string, the D note, is a part of the G chord. So that's going to be our other bass note. So we're going to go like this: 6th string strum, 4th string strum, 6th string strum, 6th string strum, 4th string strum. Same thing for the C chord. We're going to do something a little trickier with the C chord. We're going to play the C note on the 5th string for beat 1's bass note, strum. Then I'm going to reach over with my 3rd finger, and I'm going to play the G note on the 6th string for beat 3. And you can go ahead and strum this. It's going to register as a C chord even though you're playing it with a G in the bass. It's going to sound like this. So you're going to see my third finger switch back and forth. So that's going to be our bass note strum pattern for the C chord. And then the D chord, we're going to do something similar, which is that we're going to be going to the lower strings for our other bass note. So we're going to play that 4th string open on beat 1, strum. Then we're going to go back to the 5th string open, it's an A note, and strum the D chord. So we're going to be doing this on the D chord. Now, this accompaniment pattern that we're doing now is very, very solid, very full sounding, and you really don't need a whole lot else. Let me just kind of play the chords around a time or two so you can hear that it sounds pretty full. Missed that note. So that is really doing a lot for the song, because you're kind of doing the job of a bass player, which is to hit chord tones on beats 1 and 3. So 2 strong notes from the chord are helping the person listening understand, musically what the chord is. That's a nice solid bass line, very simple bass line, but that's what even jazz bass players do a lot of the time, is they play a chord tone on beats 1 and 3 because you need to keep the harmony together that way. And you really don't need to add a whole lot else. So if you'd like to try playing along with the song, just using that idea, I really recommend that being what you focus on, and you get really comfortable with that. Before you move on to some of the added things that we're going to talk about, talk about the right hand just briefly. There is a kind of a difference in terms of I'm keeping my wrist really relaxed rather, but there's a different amount of pressure between the bass note and the strum, in that I'm hitting those bass notes pretty hard. I'm kind of digging in, So it feels like I'm using more force there. And then I'm really super relaxed with the strum. I'm just letting my hand kind of fall. If any of you are banjo players, it's almost similar to when you are doing claw hammering. You're just kind of letting your hand fall. I think that's about what there is to say about this. You need to practice this this pattern around and around. If you're already comfortable with shifting chords in the key of G between G, C, and D, this is just going to be some right hand work. And once you feel ready, you can see if you can play along with the play along version of this song.